Hi Noshers, my name is Micah, the host of Not Your Bubby's Nosh, a conversation about your favorite and least favorite Jewish foods, your go-to source for holiday meal inspiration, and a place to discuss and kvetch about which bubby made it best. Welcome, Noshers. I am so excited for today's guest. I am low-key fangirling over here because this is someone who has made absolute waves in the Jewish food world. Jake Cohen is one of the people responsible for making Jewish food cool again. And I have the utmost respect for anyone in this field who does that, who inspires people young and old, Jewish and not Jewish, to enjoy Jewish food. A little bit about Jake. He is a New York Times best-selling cookbook author and, of course, a nice Jewish boy from New York. After working in some of New York's best restaurants and test kitchens, he wrote his first book, Jew-ish, about his love of modern Jewish cooking and baking. His next book, Could Nosh, came out this past September on the 12th, and the recipes have been featured on Rachel Ray, The Drew Barrymore Show, Live with Kelly and Ryan, Good Morning America, the Food Network, and in the New York Times. And there's more, but I am running out of breath. He is awesome. And when he's not posting challah recipes, often shirtless, he is cooking up a storm with some of New York's hottest chefs. So let's give a very warm welcome to the one, the only Jake Cohen. Hi, Jake. I'm so excited to have you on Not Your Bubby's Nosh and talk about our favorite topic of noshing together. And I'm so excited. I'm kvelling. So welcome.
Love it. So excited to be here.
And Jake, you have become a staple in Jewish kitchens, especially with Jew-ish. What makes your new book, Could Nosh, different than Jew-ish?
Yeah, I think one of the ways that I saw the first book so well received was through this concept of large-scale entertaining, big Shabbats, holidays, and something that I kept really starting to notice is that Jewish food and these recipes are being really only cooked during these times. And for me, I am such a huge believer in Jewish food should be an everyday part of your routine. So this book is really about everyday hospitality. I refer to it as grandma hospitality. So it's the way that you imagine your grandma when you would visit, and there's always something sweet on the counter, and there's always some soup in the freezer, and there's always food ready to feed those you love. And that's what this book is about. It's really about embracing that kind of mentality, whether that's large scale items that yield tons of leftovers or super light little soup salads and sandwiches.
I love that. And I think that's what we all need, because you're right. People often think I have to do Shabbat or nothing, or I have to do the holiday or nothing. Similar to you, I try to go Jewish adjacent where it feels Jewish enough, or maybe we're using an ingredient that is more common in Jewish diasporic cuisine, but it doesn't feel like you have to prescribe to just one thing for the holidays, and every day can feel that way, which is exciting. And I think it's the new wave of Jewish cuisine for people in younger generations to feel connected without feeling like they have to do everything, quote unquote, perfectly, whatever that means these days.
Completely.
So I love that. I'm so excited to see it. First of all, it looks beautiful. Do you have a favorite recipe in the book?
So it changes. It changes every day as I make different ones. I will say right now, my favorite is my simmus cake. So it's a play on simmus, which is obviously an Ashkenazi side dish, because we love a sweet dish that we serve in savory applications. So it's kind of a play on carrot cake, but instead of just carrots, it's carrots and sweet potato and prunes and orange and cinnamon. And it's so good. It's just so much better than any normal carrot cake.
I'm so excited to try that one. I'm a carrot cake girly. It's the only cake. I'm not a cake girl, but I love a carrot cake. And I saw that on your Instagram and I was like, this is a beautiful work of genius. So I think that one, that's a lot of fun. And again, like you can make that for a birthday or a celebration and not necessarily where we would find simmus on our everyday menu, because simmus is, I feel like, the Jewish version of a Midwestern salad, where like, because there's like some vegetables in there, but also probably an entire bucket of honey. I'm new to the States, so I've learned that everything is called a salad in the Midwest more recently. And I feel like simmus is our version of that, where like it's vegetables, but it's also borderline not anymore. Yes. So I'm excited to see that come alive in a cake. And I know that it's hard to choose a favorite recipe. It's like choosing a favorite child, and having just gone through the book process myself. If I never see one of my recipes until it launches, I'll be so happy, because you're probably also getting kind of sick of testing them a million times. Yeah.
That's kind of the magic, is like the process is so long. So I love all of these recipes, and then I get to walk away from them. And now I'm kind of revisiting them for the first time in like a year. And it's just such a great reminder of like, oh, this is really good. People are going to really love this, and really seeing like what are the items that are going to pop off.
Yeah, I'm also very excited to see that you're coming to San Francisco as well, which we should touch base on otherwise, because you have a laundry room, obviously, to hang out in, but I'd love to meet you in person in the Bay. And when it comes to making your recipes for the book and choosing the recipes, I know that there's a lot of inspiration from your background, which if I remember correctly, is it more of an Ashkenazi background, correct?
99.8% Ashkenazi Polish.
I'm curious about that point too, personally. But
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah, I am.
Southern Chinese.
Really?
It was and then my mom got tested, because she naturally, as soon as she heard that, she wanted to be able to blame it on my father's side. And it is indeed, she was 100% Polish Ashkenazi. So it's
interesting.
10 generations ago, we have a little surprise that no one knew about.
Did that inspire a recipe in the book?
No.
I don't know. Maybe
I grew up in Queens, so it's like I have a never-ending obsession and love for all Asian cultures, cuisines.
I love that. I've not done a 23andMe because I'm afraid. And
I was as well.
Yeah. So I still haven't, but you never know. But so you with your 99.8 Ashkenazi, and your husband comes from a different background. How do those two backgrounds influence how you come up with recipes?
So my husband, who is a quarter Ashkenazi, but the majority is Persian Iraqi. And as a result, that was kind of the more dominant cultural force in his upbringing. So for me, it was such an incredible part of our relationship, because it was this opportunity to get to know each other in a way that neither of us had any background in. He had no concept of Ashkenazi culture, cuisine. He never heard of babka. He never had matzo ball soup. He never had any of it when we met. And likewise, I was completely unaware of the cultures and traditions that surrounded the same rituals that I grew up on, but with a completely different menu. So it was really incredible way that we got to know each other, learn about each other's families and background, and then create our own narrative of how we are going to combine the two. So there are a lot of recipes in this book that are a lot of family recipes. I think having a platform to be able to write these books, is truly my biggest agenda. Is preserving family recipes. So if there's a good family recipe from my family, from his family, it goes in the book. Mm-hmm. And it's now a resource for everyone in our families, as well as everyone in the world, to be able to see every Rosh Hashanah people making my great grandmother's this or his mother's that. It's so special. My mother-in-law literally, there's this Iraqi salmon dish that his grandmother used to make that his mother made. And I put it in my first book because it was this whole thing where originally my first book concept was going to be just a preservation of Iraqi Jewish recipes, and had to be the first kind of built out cookbook that covered that. Obviously, it got rejected by every publisher. So I was like, well, guess what? Surprise. I'm going to split up that entire book and put them into every cookbook I write. And some of those recipes have been the most popular, including her Iraqi salmon, which I made on the Today Show. And then people all the time will come up to me and they'll be like, oh my God, I make your mother-in-law's salmon. It is my favorite recipe. And that's so magical.
It is magical. And it's the way to preserve Jewish culture and get people excited about it. And especially getting people who maybe didn't grow up eating Jewish food or know much about it. It's the ultimate equalizer. Is if we're eating around a table, everyone's going to love that matzo ball soup, no matter where you came from, what your background is. And I think that that's what's so special about Jewish food, because it brings us together. And similar to my husband's Sephardic. And so I learned so much from our time together. And I think that's the beauty of Judaism as well, just a full circle. We love Jewish food. That's why we're here. And so tell us your elevator speech of how you got into the world of food. Obviously, we glossed over that, but you are such a household name at this point. How did you get from Jake X amount of years ago to this?
So I always say it's like, this was always the plan, and I'm just very blessed that I get to live out my dream. I've always known that food was what I wanted to do professionally. I literally only applied to one college, and that was the Culinary Institute of America. Went straight there from high school. Then I worked in restaurants in the city. Knew that I didn't want to own a restaurant, run a restaurant. I've always had this obsession with media, with Food Network, with all of the ideas of how do you inspire people to cook? So I quickly moved into media, where I ran test kitchens for different food publications, all at the same time, knowing that I should probably make a little bit of a prioritization on social media, because that's my business card for how I get to do more of this. So when I really got to a place that I could do it on my own, I did. And that was around the time I got my first book deal, and the rest was history, where I'm very blessed to now be able to just focus on writing books and inspiring people to cook and developing recipes for everyone.
That's amazing. And your love of food, it came from an early age, I assume, if you wanted to work in kitchens. So then if you go back to your parents' place for dinner or a meal, what are you hoping that is on the table for your arrival?
Takeout. Literally. Yeah, no, everyone expects I come from your mother must have been a wonderful cook. My mother's fine. My mother has her dishes. She makes an incredible chicken soup. She makes incredible latke. She's got a couple of recipes that are so good, or things that are so nostalgic that I've been taken and kind of made my own. I will say my grandmother's an excellent cook. My aunt is a wonderful cook. Everyone has their things, but it's they're all. No one uses salt. No one everyone wants
everyone uses margarine. Yeah.
So it was just one of those things where that's not the goal. The goal is I have taken over hosting all of the holidays. Okay. I have taken over all of that.
Okay. So what kind of takeouts on the table then?
Oh, I mean, we live in Queens, so we have this we have our favorite restaurant in Woodside. It's the best Thai food you can get in New York, and get it delivered straight to our apartment. We have a great Szechuan place. Every day you have a different, do you want Taiwanese? Do you want Szechuan? Do you want Northwestern Chinese? Do you want Thai? Do you want Taiwanese? It's we have a place for every mood.
I love that. So you know what? Take it off the table. Don't think about cooking, Mom. Just get that Uber Eats Up or Postmates or whatever and get something ordered. I'm not going to lie. About 20 minutes ago, I DoorDashed a loaf of bread to the house because I felt like sourdough today. So sometimes you just got to rely on the good people of DoorDash to deliver you your cravings. So it's
completely.
I know, I'm quite excited. I'm not going to lie. So then on the other part of the spectrum, as a fellow nosher, what are you snacking on these days? Is there anything that you're just have a current food obsession?
Yeah, I have a couple. I will say I'm big into dips. I love a dip. Like where I can then have my fridge. I have right now, I have this recipe for sweet potato hummus in the book, and it's a very classic hummus. But what I do is one of the big issues and conversations is hummus should never be refrigerated. The second hummus is refrigerated, the starches in the chickpeas seize, and it's just the texture is off. Hummus should always be served fresh if you're going through all that work. That being said, I have found that when you roast sweet potatoes and blend it in, it not only adds like great color and great sweetness, but the moisture from the sweet potatoes creates that same texture of a swoopable fresh hummus even days in the fridge later. So that has been like the thing I'll make a giant quart of and then slowly scoop at all week long.
That's a good snack obsession. I know that you had a moment with that cottage cheese
Still
cookie
do.
dough.
Still
I made
do.
it. It was delicious. I also made it.
And that's the thing. If not, is it going to be cookie dough? No, because nothing's like cookie dough. But when you need something sweet and you need to I have a crazy protein quota. I need to be eating like 200 grams a day, which is so hard.
Which is why you have 30
I don't want.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's like why? Like I can't just be eating I'm not going to eat like a whole rotisserie chicken like a tiger every day. I'm just going to create a diversified diet. And I add some cottage cheese to my scrambled eggs. I spoon it into my oatmeal in the morning, whatever it takes.
I love it. And I love that cottage cheese has had its moment this year, of course, because it's so common in Jewish kitchens. I feel like you can't find farmer's cheese, so you use cottage cheese. You can't find this, so you blend cottage cheese. I feel like it was a huge staple in my kitchen growing up, to the point where I thought it was disgusting for a number of years. And then I came back around to enjoying it. For some reason, I had this obsession with cottage cheese and canned peaches. Which is,
of course, who doesn't? That's literally my father. That was my father's favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, and I would be like a little fancy with a splash of vanilla extract, and that would be my dessert for many evenings.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna do that's a good summer, especially in summer, making some roasted peaches on cottage cheese.
It was
the good.
ugliest thing I've ever made because it's cottage cheese, but I do love that she had her moment this year. Especially, I'm a dietitian originally, and so cottage cheese was always like a dietitian's holy grail of let's try something different. Let's blend cottage cheese because it's not so sexy to do it on its own. But I love that you had that protein cookie dough because I've been putting it on bananas and whatnot as an after. Even in my 30s, I still call it an after school snack, but I just mean that it's in the afternoon. I don't know if you ever do that. And so back to your work and your beautiful work. So between the two books, we'll start with Jewish. Is there, besides the Iraqi salmon, is there one dish in there that whoever has the book, they have to try it?
Yeah, challah. I think that was the most important thing is getting a new generation into the ritual of baking challah. I think it's one of the most magical things in the world. It's a meditative process. There's something so intimate about baking fresh bread for people. So what I did is that recipe is still so widely popular. In my second book, I updated the recipe slightly and blew it out into a chapter where I kind of wanted people to double down. Once you master a yeasted dough, which is such an accomplishment to begin with for the home cook or baker, here are all the things you can do with it. So you can bake 2 challahs for Shabbat, or you can bake 1 challah and use the other half to make monkey bread or babka or pigs in a blanket, which I call Moses in a blanket because that's what you do since we're using all beef hot dogs, or making burger buns or making schnecken, which are kind of these cinnamon roll sticky buns, or you could make pretzel, which is this onion flatbread, everything you can do with this one dough you master, which to me is that's the perfect thing because you should always have bread on hand. Why would you not have a loaf of bread to make a sandwich to snack on? When I tell you, my mother-in-law, every morning when I'll bake challah, I bake an extra one for her. It's her loaf, and she nurses it all week. She slices it, smears it with temp tea in the morning, and that's her breakfast. And to me, that's like that. When we think of noshing, it's not about like the idea of like, oh, this is a snack. This is a small scale thing. It's what are the food items that you want to be picking at all day long, all week long? What are the things that you want to nurse, that you want to savor? So that is like a rethinking in your head where it could be something that's incredibly labor intensive. I think of like a brisket. A brisket is something that I put in so much work in, and then I have all of this braised brisket that I get to eat all week long. And then sometimes like, great, I finish the meat. I have all this sauce. So I use it for pasta, or I use it for this, I use it for that. It's things that really encourage savoring cooking. And that's magical because it's creating this super intimate relationship with the work that you're putting into the food. And it's not this ephemeral, like, oh, I made this and it was great, and now goodbye. It's how am I going to put in the work and reap the benefits for so long?
I think that's great. And especially with some of those dishes that might feel to the home cook like a big process of making, like a brisket or a challah, to show that you can do it, do so many things with it and keep, like you said, reaping the benefits can sometimes help lower their barriers to actually making it, where they understand the value of spending the time to braise the brisket if they can make these 5 delicious things with it, or do something different with it, or they don't have to do it all at once and make a tiny one. And then it's gone because, I mean, we cook all day and then we spend even more time cleaning up the mess, which is no one's favorite part of the job. I know that. That drives me crazy, but I do run through a lot of Seinfeld episodes while cleaning. So I've watched it. Well, I watch the whole series in about a month, every month, which is sad and also satisfying.
No, own it. I love that.
Sad and also satisfying. So challah, would you say for both books? Those would be the go-tos?
Not the go-tos, but the entryways.
Okay.
The ways that people need to kind of really start from there. I'm such a believer that when people come to me and ask that question, I go to them and it's like, what's the thing that you've cooked in the last month that has brought you the most amount of joy? And if it's like, all right, well, it was this cake, then I was like, well, then I'll steer you in this direction, or it was this chicken dish, and I'll steer you in that, or it was this pasta. It's figuring out like what's going to bring someone the most joy. That is what I love the most about a book, is that these are like 115 recipes that I put so much love and energy and work into, and everyone's going to have a different reaction to it and a different favorite and a different way that they navigate through the book and how they cook through it. So for me, it's such a personal journey that I'm going to start to guide, which is like even down to like, I have a whole section on schmears. So the idea is like, all right, buy your bagels, buy your lox, zhuzh up the schmear, and you can entertain and create this kind of environment of your bagel and lox with a little more oomph. And I look at this collection of 10 schmears, and they're so diverse. I have like a new version of I have a roasted vegetable cream cheese. I have a fried scallion and garlic cream cheese. I have a tahini za'atar. I have a harissa preserved lemon. I have a lox cream cheese. I have all of these ones, and everyone's going to have a different favorite. And that's the best. The best is that there's not one way. And I say this all the time. Everything I do is my opinion and what I like. And you might love it. It might not be for you. It might be for someone you love. Think about how every household is cooking all these meals, and you have to kind of adjust recipes based on people's preferences and their tastes and their allergies and their this and their that. And that's why I see these books as kind of like jumping off point for so many people to really embrace cooking for themselves, for others, and create that intuition of how they're going to really embody that inner balabusta, that they can take a recipe and run with it.
I love that. And that's what cookbooks are there for. They're guides. They're not hard and fast rules. They're just a way for people to feel confident and excited in the kitchen. Exactly. And I think that's the goal when it comes to somebody making food, that it brings them joy and it doesn't make them want to cry in the corner because they messed it up. It's salvageable. I know that speaking of crying in the corner, actually, when it came to writing the book, are there any recipes that really threw you for a loop? Maybe they made the cut, maybe they didn't, but you had this beautiful idea of something to put in there and then it made you cry in the corner?
There was one and it didn't make the cut. I got through, I think it was like the 12th time I made it, and it just wasn't getting to the direction that I wanted. And I was like, I think I have to step away from it for right now. And the idea was I love rainbow cookies. Mm-hmm. I have a great K for P rainbow cookie recipe in my first book. And I wanted to add it into my snacking cake recipe section, and create a cake that had 3 layers, but not something you had to build, something that baked as a loaf all together. Okay. So you would split the batter, dye it, and then you would just like pour it into your loaf pan, layer after layer, and bake it. And it would come out like this beautiful rainbow cookie loaf that you would slice. And they're the 3 colors, which was great in my head. But in the end of the day, one of the reasons that rainbow cookies work is because the layers you bake are so thin. Almond paste is so heavy that creating the structure of a cake that could both cook through and hold up its own weight was pretty impossible. Maybe I'll get there one day of figuring out some way around it. I think the only way I'll be able to do it is by kind of stepping away from the tradition of having actual real almond paste in it, which I don't know that I want to do. So it's funny because then I stepped away from that, but it also like allowed me to really rethink of what I wanted to do. I had this recipe. Almonds are a big theme in this book. I always say that like the cookbook's like a fashion collection where it's like really focused on my obsessions. And I have a couple of obsessions that you see a lot in this book: dates, syrup, dill, and almond is like a huge part. And I have this chocolate marzipan snacking cake, and it's kind of perfect because it's a snacking cake. It's not like super thick. It's 2 batters, chocolate batter and almond batter kind of marbled together. So it's like a marble cake, but has chunks of marzipan in it, which are like super fudgy, and they like weigh the cake down. So it makes it like really nice and decadent and dense, and it works. And it wouldn't have happened if I didn't have all of this struggle with the rainbow cookie cake. So at the end of the day, it's all a blessing.
Yeah, it all worked out. Well, we'll stay tuned for book number 3 that features that cake on the cover.
We'll see.
In all her glory, 3 beautiful layers with some sort of almond situation in there. And so it's always nice for people, I think, to know that you're human, things also make you cry in the kitchen. Or maybe I'm just projecting and I'm trying to make sure that also you cry in the kitchen sometimes after things don't work and things don't make it. And I think that's the beauty of it. I mean, we test things every day and sometimes it works and sometimes it's a flop, but I know that we just eat all the flops and just deal with it. We've eaten many mediocre dishes. Yeah, we just keep going because it's not all going to work out. But Jake, you have made your platform as the nice Jewish boy, especially the nice Jewish boy in the kitchen. And disclosure, I am a soon-to-be mom of a hopefully nice Jewish boy. So tell me, what does it mean to you to be a nice Jewish boy? This is going to be life lessons from Jake to tell to my half 2/3 baked child.
It's really interesting. So I have this very interesting relationship with religion, and I don't consider myself incredibly religious, while at the same time, I do believe that one of the things that kind of unites us as a people is this idea that really, even through the trickle down of secularization, everything in our lives are kind of dictated by Torah. And not Torah in the sense of like, you have to do this, but Torah in the sense of these are the conversations around morals and ethics that we need to be having as both a community and a family unit. So to me, it is about that kind of understanding and prioritization of the family and the community. Like a perfect example is literally we're recording this now, and Sunday I'm flying to Aruba to help my grandmother pack because she's moving to Florida. Yeah. Thank God. And I mean, only one in the family who agreed to go. And this is in the middle of my book press and going. And I was like, still the only one who didn't say, I can't do it. No, sorry. And it's about just making time, like making time for my mother literally lives a block away from me. If you ask her, I'm constantly ignoring her and this and that. I talk to her every day. I see her multiple times a week. It's just never enough for her, but it's prioritizing family. It's prioritizing doing a mitzvah when you can. It's not about being perfect. It's not about not like putting yourself first at times, but it's about always thinking about those around you. My friend Modi always, like him and his husband always tell me like they have these 3 things that they live their life by that I'm obsessed with. Hydrate, moisturize, and be nice. And if you can do those 3 things every day, you're going to be in a great place. And that's the magic of being an NJB.
I love that. That is a mouthful of wisdom. And I hope that he heard that in the womb. I have been moisturizing and hydrating. So I hope that all those 3 things that will help my future son turn into a nice Jewish boy. And I hope that he doesn't ignore me and that he lives a block away forever. And
that's
also loves to cook Jewish food and makes challah for his in-laws every week. So that's the ultimate goal, really. I had to get that piece of advice from you, obviously, because I'm a nice Jewish girl, but I've never experienced life as a nice Jewish boy. And speaking to my friends, they're few and far between. You know, it's hard sometimes to find a nice Jewish boy. So it's nice to connect with one today. So before we go, I want to get an idea of what you're most excited about for your book tour. Is there one event that you're really looking forward to, and what and how can people get involved?
Yeah. So I love to meet people. I think that's one of the things that's so exciting is that so much of this work is done kind of in a silo of I'm putting out these recipes and I'm hearing from people and seeing their pictures of how they make them for their families and for their loved ones. But to actually get to meet them and have these one-on-one moments is super special. So that's why I go on tour and I'm hitting a ton of cities. I'm even going to add on a few more because I wasn't expecting the amount of outrage when I skipped a couple of cities, because already I'm like, it's going to be like 2 months of nonstop travel. But I launched on September 12th at the Stryker Center here in New York City in conversation with Isaac Mizrahi, which is going to be super special. And then I go to Jersey on September 13th, where I'm talking with my friend Taffy Brodesser-Ackner, who wrote Fleischman's in Trouble, incredible, brilliant writer. And then I take a quick break for Rosh Hashanah, and then I'm in Toronto on September 20th. After Yom Kippur, I'm in Philly on the 29th in conversation with Mike Solomonov at the Weitzman Center. Nice. October 1st, I'm in LA with Alex Edelman at the Skirball Center. October 3rd, I'm in San Francisco at the SFJCC. November 1st, I'm in Atlanta at the JCC, and then a couple of more sprinkled throughout.
That's very exciting. I know that we are excited to have you in the Bay this fall as well, October 3rd. It's in my calendar, and the JCC events are always fantastic. They're put on with Omnivore Books typically, and she is lovely. I actually live a block away from Omnivore, so I've become a high purchaser from Omnivore, and it's very dangerous to live that close to a cookbook store. And so now our last thing together is I just want to do a little lightning round to get your first thought from each of these. Are you ready? They're very personal and intimate. And we're going to start with your favorite Jewish holiday.
Passover.
Ditto.
Passover, I think I love the way that it's rooted around celebrating freedom, and I love the challenge of not having to use leavened bread.
I agree. Your bagel order.
2 options. I'm very classic in the sense of I love like a scallion cream cheese on everything with Nova. That being said, I love tuna fish on cinnamon raisin.
Okay. What is the most underrated Jewish food?
Gefilte fish. I think a really great gefilte fish, when it's done fresh, when it's done right, it's incredible. So many cultures have these insane fish terrines or dishes that are revered and considered high society, and yet we've allowed gefilte fish to be considered not good, which I think is ridiculous.
I also agree. The most overrated Jewish food.
Interesting. I would say babka. But here's the reason why. It's like so much of the babka we know is not like traditional babka. Babka, as we know, is a way to use up challah dough. And the thing about it is that it's supposed to be something that you're supposed to have with coffee. It's like a little afternoon treat. It's not supposed to be this overly decadent dessert that's like molten, falling apart lamination. That's where we're getting into babka inspired pastries, but I think that we need to kind of go back to its roots.
Well said. And lastly, toasted or untoasted? You can take this however you like.
Here's the deal. Toasting is necessary when the bagel's not fresh. There's nothing like a fresh bagel. When you have a fresh bagel, it's crispy on the outside, soft in the middle. It's perfect. It's perfect. You'll never get anything better. After a few hours, it's got to be toasted. As soon as it's cold, it's got to be toasted.
It's true, actually. But you're right, fresh bagel, when you can find it, which is much simpler in New York than it is
very easy
in other
York,
places.
luckily.
You can typically get a hot out of the oven bagel. But Jake, this has been such a pleasure. I'm so happy that we were able to connect and I could have this conversation with you. And for everyone, please go buy I Could Nosh by Jake Cohen immediately and buy 10 for your friends, because that's how Jake can keep writing cookbooks, is that if we all buy 10 for each friend and then they each buy 10 for their friends. So thank you.
From your mouth. I love it.
Yeah.
Not Your Bubby's Nosh is a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network and is produced by Jew Folk Inc. For more shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast. If you've got questions, email me at micah@noshwithmicah.com.